You're listening to Radio Kidnaps, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called
The Wonderful World of Wardini Books.
And our pleasure, as always, to have in the studio the wonderful Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. Your empire is still two fabulous shops.
Yes, absolutely, and that's all it will be.
And, but of course you're on the internet, so you're worldwide.
Absolutely we are,
You're too right. Yeah. And we are here today to talk about three more fabulous books, and the first one is called Once Upon a Unicorn Horn. What a great title for a book.
It's a wonderful picture book by Beatrice Blue, which is also a great name for a person who writes children's picture books. And I don't have it to wave at you because I forgot it, in all honesty. So this one is about a little girl called June, and she's very tiny. And she's flooping about outside one day, and she comes across this little herd of horses, tiny horses, and they're all flying horses, apart from this one tiny horse who can't fly yet, and he's feeling very sad and mopey. And so she tries to play him up, and they cheer him up, and they have a wonderful time, and they play, and she carts him about on her little trolley thing, and they play like kids would play,
absolutely.
you know. And there's all these wonderful pictures that I can't show you because I forgot the book of. The little tiny horse just laughing away and having a great time, and then he remembers that he can't fly like all the other tiny horses, and he gets sad again. So she goes home and she says to her parents, who are the most wonderful kind of parents that don't be stupid, there's no such thing as a flying horse. And she says, how can I cheer up my friend, the little tiny flying horse who can't fly? And so they come up with all sorts of lovely ideas, and eventually, because they fail a bit to cheer him up or her up, I don't know what gender the horse is, I'm sorry, Ken. They take an ice cream because everybody loves ice cream. So
who doesn't love an ice cream?
But a clumsy thing happens, and the ice cream goes flying, and it sticks in its cone upside down on the horse's forehead, which makes the tiny horse laugh so much, and he is so happy and so magical and tingly that you know what happens?
He starts flying?
He starts flying!
Wow, what a great book.
So that's how the unicorn got his horn. It's an upside-down ice cream.
I love that song.
In a cone.
Yes, and of course you remember that song, The Unicorn by the Irish Rovers?
No, would you please
I could sing that
for me?
I'm going to do that for you next week.
Okay. Do you know what? When I was playing in the Irish band in this particular pub, whenever we got that song requested, we always refused to play it.
Why is that? Because
the unicorn. I don't know why.
Oh, it's a great song.
I can't even think how it goes.
You're never going to see no unicorn. You'll see green alligators. You know the one?
I do not.
Oh, wow.
So I couldn't have played it even if I'd wanted to.
Anyway,
what a failure I am.
I think if I worked at your store, I would be reading all those kids' books that you talk about, because they're very uplifting, aren't they?
Oh, just so much fun. You know, and they're either really cute or really poignant, or bring back a memory from your own childhood.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're lovely.
Now we're going from one extreme, give you a bit of an uplift, to let's take you right down to a black hole with a book called The Prophets.
I don't know if it'd take you down into a black hole, but it's definitely pretty full on. So this is by Robert Jones Jr., and he's an American author. He lives in Brooklyn and received his BFA in creative writing and MFA in fiction from Brooklyn College, and he's a wonderful writer, as you would imagine. So this one deals with slavery, basically. So there's a plantation in Mississippi, and our two main characters are Samuel and Isaiah, and they've grown up together ever since Isaiah was brought as a child to the plantation. He soon forgot who his parents were. He was taken from his parents, who were on another plantation, and just dumped at this new one. And they'd travelled for so long, and Samuel was the little boy that gave him some water, and they became firm friends. And they're given these jobs to do in the barn. They look after the horses, and they muck everything out and lift hay bales. And basically, the master is trying to make these two fine specimens breeding.
Yes.
What's the opposite of a mare? Stallions, sort of thing. To make strong slaves. Only problem is Isaiah and Samuel love each other. As they grow up and they get past puberty, their friendship just naturally forms into a different kind of relationship. In old African cultures, that was never an issue. Every now and again, a pair of people would come through, and they would be celebrated just like anybody else. But of course, years into slavery, where a lot of these African people don't know where they even came from, they don't know who their parents are, they're neither one thing or another, and they've lost their culture and their magic and their traditions and their spirituality. Christianity has crept in, and there's this one particular slave who is in with the master and trying to control the rest of the slaves on the plantation through the implementation of Christianity. And so it is about how their own community turns against them.
Wow.
But it's also about, there are beautiful sort of incantation passages where the old magic has not been lost by one or two of the women it's not been lost. And then there are passages where you have the tribes in Africa where it all began, and how the skinless ones, they called the white people the skinless ones because it didn't look like they had any skin.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting take, isn't it?
That's a great way of saying it too, isn't it? I love it.
How they just came on the pretense of friendship, but kidnapped these people, took these people, and the journeys were just horrendous. And it just really brings it back to you, Ken. You know, you have a lot of Second World War in particular books, stories, that you go, oh my God, I thought I knew everything there was about the Holocaust, but you still don't. No. And then you think you know about slavery. But you don't. Right. And you cannot put yourselves in those shoes. And so this is what this author is trying to do. And he's a young black gay man trying to get that across, you know, that this wasn't always seen as aberrant behaviour, and I'd like to hope now that it's not again.
Exactly.
But, you know, it was almost to be celebrated as a special thing.
If we fast forward to the end of that book, are we going to be uplifted or not?
Ooh.
Spoiler?
You are going to have read some very beautiful writing.
I'm sure.
And you are going to have probably been educated in some way and learned things. But how can that end well?
No, it cannot. That's what I thought.
It never did.
No, it did not.
Yeah.
And so is this book going to appeal to?
I would say it's probably your more literary readers and your readers that like something gritty to actually get their teeth into.
It's based on fact, or is it a fiction book?
It's
totally fiction.
Oh, sorry.
It's totally fiction.
It's fiction. It's a story. But I would imagine, there's a note there from him that I can't see properly. He describes himself as a black queer person who's felt so cut off from his lineage. The question he wanted to ask, did black queer people exist in the distant past? So that's what he's done. So he has then gone and he read every book about the pre-colonial African societies in the American antebellum period that he could get his hands on. So he's really done. Yeah. It will be from history.
Is it a book that comes to a natural end, or can you see it going on to another book about?
It could go on to another book, but it does have a very natural end, I would say. Leave it there.
All right, and the next one is more of my kind of book, I might think. 7 Kinds of People You Meet in Bookshops.
Deliberately, unashamedly funny, and meant to be funny. So this is Sean Bithell, who wrote The Diary of a Bookseller and then The Confessions of a Bookseller, and he's a very dour, dry Scotsman. And it's called Wigton, and it's up southern Scotland, so I think it's border country, you know. And he's got a second-hand bookshop there. And he has described in the past in great detail the people that annoy him that come into his bookshop. He's only a young man, really. I think he's younger than I am. So he must be very young.
Very like a kid.
Yeah, just a baby. But this one is he's done a thing, and he does it with a very sort of self-deprecating humour. He's put it into genuses. So he's got the expert, Peritus, the expert. He's given them their Latin titles that he's clearly fiddled about with some Latin for. The Familia Juvenis, the young family, the occultist, the loiterer, the bearded pensioner, the not-so-silent traveller, and the family historian. So, and then later on there's a bonus one, which is staff in second-hand bookshops.
Indeed, that would be you.
Yeah. So I've identified myself as the whistler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and you see, I've always been proud that I'm a good whistler, but now I've read this and thought, oh my God, I've just been irritating people for years. I love to whistle. I've always got a tune in my head.
I like whistling too, and there's hardly anyone does it anymore.
Do they not?
No, apparently not.
I love a good whistle.
Dying art. Now, you will know, and maybe it relates to that book that we are just talking about, where did the term bookworm come from?
Oh, now it's different in different languages. I read something, I don't know if it was in here, I don't think it was, that each language has a different term for a bookworm. So I suppose it's something that eats books, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose it is.
So, there were book slugs and there were all sorts of different ones, but each language has a term for that, but it's different. I'll see if I can find that for next week.
Good on you. And if we want any of these fabulous books, where do we get them?
Yeah, come and see us at Wardini Books, please.
Good on you, Lou. As always, my pleasure. You look after yourself. We'll talk to you same time, same place next time.
Thank you.